Hello everybody, my name is Rick Yoder and I work with the Nebraska Business Development Center here at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I'm thankful today and happy that you could join us as we listen to Ruth Shuman, who is the SBIR STTR Program Director for NSF. And with no more introduction than that, other than to say, housekeeping-wise, please use the questions or the chat mode in the box off to the right to ask questions. You are all muted, as I will be during the presentation. I will moderate those questions and hand them off to our presenter at the end of her presentation. And there is something urgent, raise your hand if you have that capability, but it's still going to be up to me to do that moderation. Your questions will be answered. We are making a recording of this presentation. We will have the slides available after the presentation. So thank you once again for attending. And with that, Ruth, you may begin.
Well, thank you very much, Rick, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak with everyone this morning. Thank you so much for attending. So as Rick said, I am a program director at the National Science Foundation in the SBIR program. I am a program director in the biological technologies area. That's my area of expertise, although today I'm going to talk about all of our areas so you get an idea of what we cover here at NSF. Let me first talk a little bit about the basics of the program. And this is for both the SBIR and STTR programs. We think of ourselves as pre-seed funding for small businesses. We currently have an emphasis in startup technologies and startup businesses, but of course all small businesses are welcome to apply. And our goal is to catalyze commercialization of high-risk technological innovations. We like to think of ourselves as the first money into your company, and that money should be used to fund proof of concept for the technology that you are developing. Last year, the budget year 2016, we had about $190 million at NSF to spend on small businesses. Of course, I would just mention to you that this year, Congress has not passed a budget yet, so we're not certain what our budget will be for 2017. We're thinking it's going to be about the same. We're optimistic that it should be about the same as last year, so we're anticipating, again, around $190 million. And that allows us to fund about 400 companies per year. I have a slide about this a little later in my presentation. You'll see it's a little bit more than that, actually. But typically we're funding about 400 companies a year, and that includes both phase 1 and phase 2. And the other thing I would mention to you that is that we're different than some of the other federal granting agencies in that we only provide grants. We do not provide contracts, and of course these are not loans. It's really an equity-free investment for you to conduct the R&D that you need to do to develop your technology. I want to talk a little bit about where we see the value of this technology at NSF. And this is a classic diagram of where we see the impact of our funding. So we think of our funding as a bridge to private investment. And in this bridge, you'll see that as we look at academic or other types of fundamental or basic research funding, the phase 1 funding comes into play just as that fundamental work has been completed. So our SBIR money comes in at this stage, and then hopefully would be followed by phase 2 funding, and then some of the supplements that we offer, and again I will talk about these in more detail. So as we look at the types of technology that we like to fund, we are not likely to fund this early discovery or fundamental or basic research phase. We really want to come in and fund as you have identified a commercial opportunity, have identified a possible product, and hopefully a value proposition for that product, and we're funding that development stage. And our goal is to make you more attractive and follow up to investors and to industrial partners that might further invest and help you commercialize that technology. So the aims of the program are to provide funding to startups that are developing high-impact engineering and science-based products and services. So these are the areas, very broad areas, that we play in for our funding. And our goal really is to provide research dollars to help you de-risk the technology development, which would hopefully encourage private investment at that third stage that I just showed you. And over the last few years, we've also added to that, and we now provide training for you, and I'll speak to this a little bit more in just a second. But again, the idea is to de-risk the value proposition and business model and help accelerate your business strategy, which again, hopefully would encourage private investment in follow-on to your NSF funding. And finally, the overall goal for this program is long-term economic growth. And what we really are looking for is something that we can measure in terms of revenue and job growth. That is really the impact that this technology has had on the industry that you're addressing. All right, so a few more slides to maybe bring a little bit more clarity to our program for you. So again, we are funding small businesses to conduct R&D that is critical to commercial success. So not fundamental or basic research, but something that really is on a commercial path. We like to support transformational and game-changing technology at an early stage. So again, as I started off, I said we like to be the first money in, and we want to fund at that very early stage of development. And what do we mean by transformational? Well, we're really looking for a very novel technology, hopefully something that you can protect with a patent application, and something that really is a leapfrogging technology compared to the state-of-the-art of the industry. So something that really is going to have an impact that changes how that industry operates going forward. And finally, we make investments across a very broad range of technologies and application areas. And again, I'll show you that complete list and talk about them in just a moment. And why do we do this? You probably know that the SBIR program is a federally mandated program, and 11 different federal government agencies participate in this program. One of the things that you may not know is that the SBIR program was actually invented here at NSF. A program director and an academic program director thought it might be a good idea to provide funding to small businesses that are doing early stage research toward the development of a commercial product. And fortunately, Congress liked that idea, and this program has now been in place more than 30 years. So it's been a very long-running program, and I think it's been very successful. The Congress, in their law in 1982, with the idea that we would stimulate technological innovation and foster and encourage participation by socially and economically disadvantaged and women-owned businesses, and finally increase private sector commercialization of innovations derived from federal funding. You'll notice that I skipped over one and have grayed that statement out on my slide, and that is another goal of the federal government with this funding is to use small businesses to meet federal R&D needs. But at NSF, I mentioned to you that we do not do contract research with you. We only do grants, so that is the reason that this one is not highlighted on my screen. All right, so what else do we do? Well, I think there are several things that NSF does that goes beyond just providing you funding. First, and probably more so than any other federal agency, we encourage and support your commercialization. One of the primary ways that we do that at the moment is that all grantees receive training in stage-appropriate business areas, and they receive mentorship from program directors like myself. So what does that mean? Actually, as a Phase 1 grantee, you will participate in a program that's very similar to NSF's I-Corps program. And many of you may have heard of I-Corps. It's now spread across the country, if not across the world, as a program that teaches you about the process of customer discovery, helping you to identify your value proposition and business model. And at Phase 2, we also continue that training. That training is now at Phase 2 more aimed at a company in the development stage rather than in that startup stage, and provides information on how to raise capital, how to prepare financial statements, among a very large host of other topics, which I think also really helps to get you prepared for some of that first funding into your company and really moving your products into the marketplace. In addition, we have found that by receiving an SBIR or an STTR award from NSF, that this has a very positive effect on companies that and potential investors that might be interested in either partnering with you or investing in your company. Gone through a rigorous review process and have been chosen as an award winner. And finally, our programs have conferences which allow you to meet other grantees, and we found that the ability for you to talk with other companies going through some of the same things that you're going through and some of the same challenges that you face really provides a very nice support system as you move through our program. All right, let me talk about what grantees look like today, or give you a profile of what a company looks like. So if any of you listening today had received award, let's say prior to 5 or so years ago, our system has changed quite a bit, actually. Today, you'll see that companies are small. 92% of all awardees have 10 or fewer employees. Many of them have 5 or fewer employees, so that they are very small businesses now. Again, our emphasis shifting to more of the startup stage company rather than a company with an established history. And of those companies, 87% of the awardees have never had a prior SBIR Phase 2 award from any agency. So again, NSF likes to fund early. We like to fund startups, and we like to come in to this project at the very first stages of the project. So this is reflected now in the and again, to support this, the age of the company, 78% of awardee companies were incorporated within the past 5 years. So again, a very new company. Many of them actually creating their startup simply because they are able to apply for and receive SBIR funding. So the message behind this to you is that if you are thinking about starting a company and have an idea, this is probably your very best first place to send your proposal, because we're really looking for startups and for companies that have just been founded. All right, let me tell you a little bit more about our grantees. So these are statistics from about 18 months ago now, so I apologize. I don't have recent statistics from all of 2016. This spans part of 2015 and 2016. But in that time frame, 338 awards were made last year, and then of the 2,000 plus proposals we received, about 16% were funded. We've been in a funding range of anywhere from 15 to 20% for the past 3 years. And again, this year we might see a little bit of a dip in that depending on our budget, but it should be in line with this range, maybe just a little bit lower. For phase 2, we find about 118 proposals were submitted from, 118 were awarded from 303 proposals submitted last year, and of these, about 39% were funded. So again, a little bit more than phase 2, but I think what you'll see here is a very competitive program, and so I'm here today to tell you a little bit about how to make the most competitive proposal, and certainly here to answer questions about that as well. So as we look at other statistics, I think you might be interested in knowing that about 10 to 15 of all phase 2 companies are actually acquired during the time that they have an award with us, and occasionally some of our phase 1 companies as well. So this is a pretty high success rate. And about half of all phase 2 grantees are able to raise private funding during their phase 2 award as a direct result of their NSF funding. And over the past few years, this has amounted to about $60 million per year across all of the phase 2 companies that were funded. So it's a very significant amount of money. And again, I think that it supports the idea that phase 2 companies are attractive targets for investors and industrial partners interested in investing and collaborating with you on those projects. All right, so let me talk about now some of the specifics. I'm going to first talk in general about what we fund, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about proposals and topic areas in a moment as well. So what do we find? Again, we were looking for novel core technologies, and the idea is that you're going to propose research to prove the commercial feasibility and viability of this new product or process or service. So again, your phase 1 proposal should be a proof of concept for this commercial idea. And we're looking for technologies that really pose a very high technological risk at a very early stage in development. So again, if you have a technology that is something that really is a leapfrogging technology, most likely it's going to fall into this high technological risk category. And finally, your proposal is much stronger if you have moved forward with the patent applications or other means to protect this technology. It signals that you are serious about your commercial opportunity, and also gives some idea of the strength of this technology to compete against competitors. Finally, again, we are looking for game-changing technologies in your market application, and we would have hoped that you might have reached out to customers or possibly investors or commercial partners that will help validate the need and their interest in this technology, the market need, the customer need, and the interest from partners. And the way that you do that is provide letters of support from these people that you've spoken with. What do we not fund? Well, first of all, as I mentioned to you in my opening slides, we really do not fund basic research. So even though 97% of NSF is funding basic or fundamental research. That is not what we aim to do here in the SBIR program. So we really would like to see that the fundamental work has been done, that you can, if possible, reference that with a scientific citation, or perhaps you have your own preliminary data. Both of those will make this proposal much stronger, but your objectives should not be basic research or knowledge creation. Also, something else that we don't fund, which I think sometimes is not intuitive to small businesses, is that we do not fund incremental improvements in existing products or processes. We also do not fund what we call straightforward modifications. That is, if it's obvious what the next improvement might be to someone in this industry, that's typically not something we fund either. And this also includes things like new applications of a technology that you've already commercialized or that is in the commercial market, or something else that would simply broaden the existing scope of a product. So I mentioned that this is sometimes not intuitive. I think there is a tendency to believe that if you are making an incremental improvement, you might have a competitive advantage, but in our view, this would not be a leapfrogging advantage or a transformational advantage. So we're really looking for that first proof of concept for that idea rather than a new application of an existing technology. And finally, when Congress set aside created this law and set aside money for these activities in our government agencies, they only set aside money for research. So even though we stress business development, commercial activity, you cannot use the funding for any of those. So you cannot do market studies, you cannot do business development activities, and you cannot pay for things that are really important, like your patent application. So unfortunately, the money must be totally spent on your research and development activity. All right, here is our classic slide that shows the funding and gives you a little bit of an idea of the amounts of funding available to you. So we always talk about the SBIR program being a three-phase program. Phase one is your first entry into the program. You'll submit a proposal into the phase one program. And again, the idea behind the research objectives are commercial feasibility, commercial proof of concept. We have $225,000 available, and you can request a time to complete the project in anywhere from 6 to 12 months, which is a change if you are familiar with our old program, and I'll go over these one more time in a slide that follows. And we allow all phase one grantees to submit a phase two application. We do not have a program that allows you to skip phase one and move right to phase two, so the only way to earn the right to submit a phase two proposal is to have a successful phase one. But you should really be thinking about what will happen in phase two, because the money available for you at phase two is quite significant, $750,000 for a 24-month project. And in addition to that, there are supplemental funding opportunities that go along with your phase two award. The most significant listed on this slide is if you receive investment from a private investor, or money from an industrial partner, or even if you have sold product. NSF would consider that an investment and would match up to $1 million with an additional $500,000. So for a startup company, the amount of money available to you at phase two is quite significant and really helps get you towards your goals of commercializing this technology. And finally, phase three is not something we fund in the government. Phase three is your ability to raise money through private investment. to complete the commercialization of your product. And I wanted to highlight, as I just mentioned, the recent changes to the program. So we've increased the amount of money up to $225,000. Those of you familiar with the program in the last few years will know that this is up from $150,000. And it's true that $225,000 is offered to both SBIR and STTR companies. We've changed the duration. Prior to this, the SBIR program was fixed at 6 months, but now you can request anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and it's really at your discretion, but of course at the time the award is made is with NSF approval. And I think a big change in terms of your ability to speed up the process of submitting your Phase 2 proposal is that we now allow you to submit your proposal before you've actually completed all of your Phase 1 objectives. Prior to this, you had to have completed your objectives, submitted your final report before submitting your Phase 2 proposal application. So now, based on, I think, a discussion with your program director, you would be able to submit your Phase 2 proposal earlier and hopefully shorten the gap between Phase 1 and Phase 2 funding. That was the goal behind this new rule. And finally, we're going to allow you a little bit more money up front in your Phase 1 award. That is, you would be able to receive up to $200,000 of the possible $225,000 award as the first amount allowed to you when you receive your award. So it's your first advance payment to you of $200,000. And that is up again from what we've allowed in the past as 2/3 of the award. So let me move on and talk a little bit about some of the basic information. First, again, to receive an award, you must submit a written proposal responding to our solicitation, and the solicitations are released 90 days before the submission deadline. We just had our most recent solicitation was just released in March, was released on March 14th, I believe, and the next submission deadline will be June 14th, and typically we are offering 2 solicitations each year where the submission deadlines are either in June or December. So keep in mind the next one is June 14th. Plenty of time to prepare a proposal, ample time, I believe. So I encourage you to plan to submit on or before that June 14th deadline. I would also let you know that submitting a proposal to NSF does not constitute a public disclosure. All information is treated as confidential. As a program director here, we've signed confidentiality agreements, and our outside reviewers also sign confidentiality agreements, and we allow you to mark proprietary information in the proposal which protects your patent rights. So the entire proposal is kept confidential, including the title, your names as proposers, and the name of the company. All of that is kept confidential. And again, you are allowed to mark proprietary information that might be sensitive regarding patent applications. We receive proposals. Once we receive them, we have a little bit of a lengthy process identifying reviewers and then going through a panel review process where we use both technical and commercial experts. And this process may last 4 to 5 months before we make final funding decisions. But we try to get those decisions out in this 4 to 5 month period. Most awards will then begin about 6 months or so after submission. Let me talk about the technology topic areas. I said they were broad. The very first thing I want to tell you is that we actually accept proposals in almost all engineering and science related areas, including education. And so again, I think view these descriptions of topic areas as more like guidelines. We really are very happy to hear from you to learn what you are proposing and to make recommendations to you. So if you go out to our website, I guess this is the first time I'm mentioning our website, you will find almost all of the information that I've talked to you about today. But in particular, maybe one of the very first things that you might want to see is the description of the technology topic areas. Under each of these headings, there is a very detailed description of topics. Again, keep in mind, they're meant to be more like guidelines. NSF is not here to acquire technology or to use the technology for some governmental purpose. We're simply trying to encourage you to think broadly about the topic areas and feel free to submit proposals under these general headings. So again, you can see that they are very broad, everything from advanced manufacturing, advanced materials and instrumentation. Here I am in the biological technologies. We also have biomedical technologies and smart health, so two biomedical areas at the moment. We cover chemical and environmental technologies. We have educational technologies and applications. We cover electronic hardware, robotics, and wireless technologies, software and other information technologies, the Internet of Things, and semiconductors and photonic devices and materials. And in case that doesn't capture the area that you're interested in, we've added an other topics area, and you are certainly free to submit under that topic as well. So before I kind of dive into the proposal preparation, I want to just summarize a few key takeaways from my talk so far. And that is, first, keep in mind that the National Science Foundation is not a customer. We really see ourselves more like an investor, probably the first investor into your company. And NSF really places much less importance on what we call topical fit. So the topics are meant to encourage you to think broadly about your submission. We are not looking for specific technologies. Even though you'll find very detailed descriptions of those technologies, keep in mind that we really are quite open to your ideas for commercial concept, commercial product, and your submission. The funding may only be used for R&D, so keeping that in mind, successful proposals should stress the importance of the work that you're proposing on your commercial viability. And as we measure success for our companies, we're really looking at, again, long-term success metrics for the program and its grantees that are largely economic. That is, we'd like to see economic growth in terms of revenues and job growth in the U.S., and of course we'd also like to see that for your company as well. And finally, I'll just mention something about communication. So we encourage communication throughout the process. We do not have things like blackout periods, but we are quite busy at NSF. You notice that we receive a couple thousand proposals per funding cycle. That's a lot. And so to start the process, we'd like to have you send us an executive summary. That's by email. So a 1 to 2 page executive summary, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. It's probably the best way to communicate. It's very hard for us to have phone conversations with all of you. I apologize for that. I know sometimes it's really nice to hear a voice on the phone that can answer questions and give you some encouragement about your proposed idea, but it's really very difficult for us to be able to speak with everyone that would like to, so we encourage you to start the process by sending your executive summary. All right, so let me talk a little bit about proposal nuts and bolts. As I just said to you, at your option, you may communicate with the program director to get feedback. So this is not a requirement. We do not have letters of intent. We do not need to have you tell us that you're going to be submitting a proposal. But if you would like some feedback, you are welcome to contact the program director in your area. For all of the topic areas that I just showed you in the previous slide, there is a program director like myself. So there are a lot of program directors here at NSF. If you've identified the right topic area, then please write to that program director. I would also caution you, we do not encourage you to write several program directors. Write just one program director. If you happen to have selected the wrong topic area, that program director will forward your message and your executive summary to the right program director, so you do not need to worry that it's gone to the wrong place. And again, it's very difficult for us to all answer you as individual program directors. Best to send just to one program director, and they will make sure, they will either respond to you or make sure it gets to the right program director. We also ask that you wait for the solicitation to be released. Of course, it has now been released, so we welcome your email. And again, the preferred method of communication is by email. I mentioned an executive summary, so that summary does not need to be any longer than 2 pages. Please try to describe in that summary your core technology and your intellectual property position. Tell us what you propose to do in your project and something about the anticipated product or service that you hope to see at the end of the project. Tell us about the market and the market opportunity, including the value proposition. Describe your customers. Maybe tell us a little bit about the current state of the art or competition. That would be great. And finally, talk a little bit about your company and team, especially if you have some commercial experience on that team. That would be wonderful for us to know. So we'll write back to you. We'll send our comments. We'll tell you which topic or subtopic area is the best fit for your proposal. And we'll give you links to information that might be helpful in preparing your proposal. All right, let me talk about the difference between the SBIR and STTR program, just in case you're confused about which program to submit to. So I mentioned that they are pretty much the same now. We've really closed the gap between the differences in these 2 programs. They're both 6 to 12 months. And again, you can request a variable amount of time. They're both $225,000. They're both for phase 1, and for phase 2, 24-month projects and $750,000. So identical. The difference is that it really in the sub-award to a research institution. So a sub-award or a collaborator at a research institution is a requirement for the STTR. But it is not a requirement for the SBIR, but it is allowed. So and the difference is the amount of money. So as you look at this collaborating partner, if you were an SBIR company, you could provide 1/3 of the budget at phase 1 or 50% of the budget at phase 2 to a collaborating research institution. But with the STTR, as I mentioned, as a requirement, so at phase 1, you have to provide a minimum of 30% of the budget to the collaborating research institution, and you would need to have at least 40% of the budget, and that same number is true for phase 2. So again, the difference is you must have a collaborating partner, and typically what we hope to see in the STTR program is perhaps it's a university inventor that's interested in translating that technology to a business either that they have started or to a small business that's interested in commercializing the technology. Both of those are perfectly fine. I hope that clears up some of the confusion there. And the other thing I might want to add to this, I've been receiving a lot of questions. The company is the submitter, even on an STTR proposal, and the PI on the project is a person who is in the company. We do not allow co-PIs on SBIR projects, but in the STTR program, the co-PI then is that collaborator at the research institution. All right, eligibility information. So you must be a for-profit small business, fewer than 500 employees, and located in the U.S. You must be 50% or more owned and controlled by U.S. individuals. And the reason I am stating it that way is that if you are owned by venture capitalists, private equity firms, or hedge funds, you are not eligible. Many of you may know that Congress has changed the law on this and allows some companies to be funded if they are venture owned, but NSF did not opt into this program, so we do not allow you to be eligible if you are venture owned. Again, if you have questions about this, I'm happy to talk further. One other thing that's a big change for our program, which occurred last cycle, is that we now are allowing no more than one proposal per company per cycle. And cycle means either and both the SBIR and STTR submission. So it's one proposal either in SBIR or STTR program. This is a change. We had been allowing two for a number of years. And again, I hope this doesn't catch you by surprise. If you accidentally submit two, we will keep the first one and return the second one. So please keep that in mind. How about eligibility information for the PI? The PI on a project must be primarily employed by the small business at the time the award is made. So you could submit your proposal without being primarily employed at the small business, but at the time the award is made, you must agree to make that your primary place of employment, and this is defined as 51% of a 40-hour work week. So a lot of people apply thinking this means they could work at night or on weekends. That's not true. This has to be your primary place of employment. And the PI must be able to commit at least one calendar month to the project as identified in the budget. And again, no more than one proposal may be submitted per PI. And that's also true for co-PIs as well. All right, getting to my last couple of slides, I want you to have a couple of things to take away. One is we require registrations. There are 4 key registrations, and you will see them on the slide. And again, these slides will be made available to you. And if you write to your program director, they often send links to these sites for you as well. But you must have a DUNS number. You must be in the government's System for Award Management, or SAM. You have to register with SBIR.gov, and finally you have to register on our own NSF system called fastlane. And we recommend you do them in this order because you need this information. The information kind of builds by the time you get to fastlane. You need these numbers to be able to put into your fastlane registration. The other thing I will say to you is the registrations need to be identical. So you need to spell your name, company name correctly in every one of these. You need to have the address exactly the same. If there is a difference, they don't recognize it and creates a problem. So please, please be very careful as you're doing these registrations. The other thing I want to say to you is the solicitation is really your set of instructions for preparing your proposal. I'm going to apologize. It's long and it's repetitious in parts and sometimes difficult to read, but it is your set of instructions. All the information you need to prepare your proposal is contained in the solicitation. So I really want you to read it, understand what you need to do, understand the sections that you need to prepare to submit your proposal. And again, you will find links to the solicitation on our website for both the SBIR and STTR programs. And again, if you need those, links. If you are having trouble finding them on our website, you may write a program director and they will send you the links to these as well. All right, let me talk about another tool that we have that's really very helpful, and that is a guide. We call it now the fastlane guide. I have kind of an old slide. We used to call it a step-by-step guide, but now it's called your fastlane guide to preparing your solicitation. Again, because this is complex, our administrative staff prepared a guide that walks you step by step through submitting your proposal and preparing your proposal. It is terrific. I really encourage you to use this guide. And again, you'll find a link to the guide on our website. And again, if you do not have this, write to me and I will send, or any other program director, and we'll send a link to the guide. And again, we recommend that you use it. I'm going to say one final thing. We have a lot, I don't have enough information today to talk about all the things that are important, but one thing I'm going to mention to you is we have a very firm deadline on proposal submission, and that deadline is 5 p.m. in your local time, and local time is determined by the address that you give for the company, so not where you're located. So if the address is in on the East Coast somewhere, it'll be 5 p.m. Eastern time. Even if you happen to be located that day or temporarily in California, your deadline is 5 p.m. NSF has a new system. You won't even be allowed to submit past that because it will detect your address and block you from submitting your proposal. So we have a lot of other do's and don'ts with proposals, and the thing that I want to mention to you, and I'll come back to that in a moment, is the fact that we have presentations like this one online for you to view. We have YouTube videos, and we host a series of Q&A webinars over the next couple of months where as you look through now the materials that I've pointed you to, if you have questions, you may call into these Q&A webinars and ask your question, and a program director like myself will be on live for those Q&A webinars and we'll be able to answer your questions. And we have a series of these, so please feel free to go out to our website. You'll see the links to register for those webinars. And finally, I'll step back one slide. Also in my presentation today, I have the names of each of the program directors and their email addresses. So as you prepare your executive summaries and identify the right topic area, please feel free to contact these program directors directly. All right.
Ruth,
And
that is terrific.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being here today. I welcome your questions.
Yes, so we're ready for a few of our own little Q&A session, and I thank you so much for the opportunity you've given us today. I don't see any from the audience, but please type them in to the questions section on the dashboard off to your right. Don't go to dashboard, go to questions, and type them in, and then I'll be sure to to repeat those for Ruth. I've got a couple here though, Ruth. I just wanted to follow up with the timelines and the number of submittals. So make sure that I understand this. So there are 2 proposal windows in the year, and there's only 1 submission per cycle per PI. Is that correct?
And per company, yes.
And per company. Is that true if they have both a phase 1 and a phase 2 proposal?
Oh, no. So this is referring to our phase 1 cycle. So phase 2 would be considered actually a different cycle.
How many times, so are there...
So phase 2 is handled quite differently now, actually. When a company receives a phase 1 award, in your award letter from NSF, you will be given 3 time points that you are allowed to submit your phase 2. 3 dates, I should say specifically. And those dates never change. So you get to pick which date you would like to submit. The dates never change. And again, they are not submitted on the same dates as a phase 1. So they are different dates than our phase 1 proposal submission dates. So I hope that clears things up for you.
It does. Thank you. Then the other question I had, you had indicated that the applicant should be serious about their proposal, and one of the indicators of seriousness is that a patent is in the works. I had understood at one point that if you have a patent, you couldn't go for an SBIR grant. So this could just be educating me here. And
yeah, absolutely not true. Matter of fact, a patent, I think, really strengthens your proposal, and especially with the change in the patent law, filing a provisional patent is, I think, a really good idea. As early as you feel comfortable filing that provisional, keeping in mind that you're going to have to follow that up with a complete application 12 months later, so you've got to make sure you're going to have your data to support that. But I also would say, Rick, it's not unusual to see companies that say we plan an application depending on our phase 1 results. That is certainly acceptable if you are still not at a stage where you're ready to submit. But as you finish your phase 1 and are about to submit your phase 2, I would say very much important, very important rather, at phase 2 to have submitted your intellectual property and patent position, because the strength of your phase 2 really relies on that protection to the technology that you've developed.
that's terrific. Thank you. I've got some questions from the attendees.
All right.
Mr. or Dr. Shen has asked that you talk a little bit more on the 60-50% requirement of match funding.
Well, for phase 2, the phase 2B, I presume you're referring to. Again, that is a supplement to your phase 2. So there's no match required for submission of a phase 1 or phase 2 proposal. But if you receive a phase 2 award, you are eligible for what we call supplemental funding opportunities. And the main one that I discussed was something we call a phase 2B supplement. And again, if you go out to our website, you'll see a description of that too. But the phase 2B means that you have either raised money from a private source, like a private investor, or perhaps an industrial partner who has given you an investment, or perhaps money for additional research in this area. Or some companies are lucky enough to even have sales. Maybe they've sold prototypes or they have early sales. All of this funding has to be directly related to your NSF funded research. And if you submit that documentation to us, you will be considered for a match. And if you have received up to $1 million in that type of investment, NSF will match that with an additional up to $500,000. So it's a really good way to add additional funding to your company at that point.
Okay, there are two questions following this. I do want to make sure that this question was answered correctly, so I'm going to unmute Mr. Shen here to see if that question's been answered to their satisfaction.
Thank you for taking my question. Not exactly. I saw there's a both phase 1 and not phase 1. It's a SBIR and STTR. There's a on one slide, I forgot which slide number, they mentioned, you know, the commitment required for small business, like 50-40%, another one like 60-some%. That's my question.
Let's see if I can find that slide too for you. You're talking about
this one, yeah. Small business minimum budget percentage.
Okay, so first keep in mind the SBIR does not require a collaborating research institution at all. But if you did choose to have a collaborator at a university, you have to commit 66% or 2/3 of the budget at phase one to the company. So only 1/3 of the budget can go to the collaborator. And at phase two, you could commit up to 50% of the budget to a collaborator. Is that clear?
Yes, I got, yeah. In case you have a collaborator, that's what you mean.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Okay.
And
thank you.
These numbers mean the same type of thing for an STTR. The absolute minimum, however, it is required you have a collaborator. The minimum amount of money from your budget going to that collaborator is 30%, both at phase one and phase two.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm going to move on to a couple of more questions. We're running short on time. From Mr. Schreiner, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced the last name. The PI and all company employees working on SBIR STTR must be legally authorized to work in the U.S. What steps does NSF employ to enforce that policy?
Yeah, it's a self-certification. If your award is being pursued, if your proposal is being pursued as an award, I and my colleagues will send you a certification list of questions. One of those questions is, can you prove that the PI is able to work at the company? And it also asks if you are a U.S. citizen. But we do not ask you to show that documentation. You will sign the certification and other documents saying that you have told the truth about this information as you accept your award.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Schwab asks, would you like to see some proof of concept prototype information in the application, such as a picture of the device or other technical data?
Yeah, I highly recommend if you have preliminary information of any sort, put it in the proposal. And if you have data, prepare tables, prepare graphs. If you have pictures, put them in. I think all of that really helps to support your proposal. And then, of course, your objectives for your phase one proposal should be the next steps to prove that it has commercial viability and feasibility. So I think all of that preliminary data is very important.
Very good. Another question, this time from Mr. Pfeiffer. Does the PI's affiliation with both the small business and the research institute weaken an application?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that for me, please?
I'll repeat it. Does the PI's affiliation with both the small business and the research institute weaken an application?
Oh, no. Again, we see that quite a bit. I think, though, that you want to define your role, and I don't recommend really trying to wear too many hats. I mean, I think if your goal as an inventor, I presume you are the inventor, is to stay at the university, you'll want to set this company on a path for success, which means it's going to have a PI, it's going to eventually, I presume, have a CEO and business staff, and your role probably in a going forward situation there would be something like Chief Technology Officer or a scientific advisor of some sort to the company. I think you just want to clearly try to think through and share in your proposal how this is going to work as you move forward.
All right, that's terrific. Once again, thank you not only for your time today, but also for coming here on the roadshow last year. We can't wait to have you come back again.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure being there. And of course, I look forward to receiving your questions, executive summaries, and proposals. So please feel free to contact us.
All right, with that, we will end the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much.